Okay.
So your question was, are people are worried about wholesalers? Is that what you said?
Yeah. Well, so initially, yeah, just kind of out of understanding your business model and wholesaling. Like initially I had a buddy who funded us on a flip,
Okay.
and this wholesaler, his fee was $105,000 on this. And, being in real estate as an agent, as a broker, I've never made $105,000 on any commission transaction. I thought that was just bonkers. I was like, oh, whoa, like, I've been aware of this house for a while, and I was like, and my buddy who's way more experienced in flipping than I was like, dude, don't even worry about it. It's all chill. It's part of the
Wow.
game.
I cannot believe, yeah, the fact that that wholesaler was able to find that deal and get that fee, that just means he was able to negotiate it really low, or the seller, I don't know what the situation was. Like, I've made big wholesale fees as well, but I can't speak to like how their sales process is or how they talk to the seller. Like, what I do when I talk to sellers is I present the options that they have in order to sell their home. So I say, hey, look,
Hmm.
you can sell your home on the MLS. You're going to make the most money that way. It's obvious. You're going to have more eyes on it. If you don't want to do that, you can flip it right now if your house is distressed, and then you're going to make the most money that way. And then I kind of find out what they want to do. So if they're like, look, I don't have the money to flip it, I don't have the time, I don't like agents, I don't like people walking through my house, I don't want to do that. They say, hey, well, your option's a cash option. I can buy this and close really quick, but that's also not going to be, you're not going to make the most, but we can get it done 7 14 days, whatever, no inspection, blah, blah, blah. And those people they understand, at least when they talk to me, their options and, what they can do to buy and, sell their home. So, again, I don't know what that wholesaler said, but
No,
yeah,
it was a home run deal. Like it was a crazy great flip,
yeah.
and
Wow.
the fee was worth it.
Was it in Utah?
It was in Utah. I don't technically want to disclose the exact location of it just
You don't
because of
have to. No, yeah,
other
that's
situation,
amazing.
but yeah, it was a triple digit flip. It
Wow.
was a
So you
nice
made
one.
triple digits and then the wholesaler made like over, dude, that person must have just given the house away then, huh?
Well, the house was wrecked. The house was trashed. It was in bad condition. Now I understand because, like, naturally, like talking with, my buddy who was helping me flip this house, I was like, I'm curious to. I was like, why don't people just fix it up and sell it themselves? I mean, this is a lot of difference on that equity,
Yes.
you know. And then it's just like the question kind of came to mind. It was just like, it's crazy how a little bit of cat piss like just drives the value into the ground. Like they
It
don't want
does,
to
bro.
take they don't want to take that house to the MLS, and they don't want to have agents walking through it. Like, the agents with their high heels, and the place was disgusting. Like
Yeah, yeah.
it was a significant amount of, you know, like it was more than a football field's worth of trash hauled out of that place.
Yeah, I just walked a house that had it's 7 cats, 3 dogs, poop everywhere, window seals, just everything. And the seller just wanted to sell for cash. And he obviously he's an investor. He knew he could list it, but he's like, look, I'm this tenant, you might have to evict him. There's issues. So there's peace of mind. And that's kind of like what I would say, not just wholesalers, but investors in general that buy straight from off market. Like they provide that peace of mind because they just get it done. People want that.
Hmm. Well, and another question too is because like we've started to make some offers on places, and I see when people want to avoid a commission, kind of sometimes can put us in a good deal to negotiate better, on
Mhm.
this on certain said investment properties. But the biggest thing that I've like looked at is like I've never figured out like you and your group you pitch a lot of wholesaling. I've watched quite a few videos, especially
Mhm.
when I was really interested in that. I was like, what is wholesaling? After like I didn't even know what this was. And I was
Right.
like, how does this guy make that much money and no liability and a few weeks worth of work?
Right.
Um, but the biggest thing I was like, how do I ever wholesale a deal as an agent? But the problem is I like have decided that I just don't think I can technically because I don't think it fits the business model unless it's like super transparent. But it's like I'm like you could probably sell this on market for $200,000 more, and you could only pay me a 15 grand commission. Like
You
that's.
just I think you could wholesale and I know a lot of agents that wholesale, and it's like
Hmm.
you just give them the options and you let them decide. And it's as simple as like, hey, we can take this to market. You're gonna make more money. It might take a month or two, or I know some buyers that can buy it right now. And I can, if you tell me what price makes sense, I'll see if I can get them anyone to buy it. And then you just add
Yeah.
your fee on top. And you can even tell them like, hey, I'm also adding my fee on top. You can disclose it, so whatever you want, whatever helps you sleep at night. A lot of investors will double close. They'll actually buy the house with transactional funding, and then they'll sell it so they actually own it. So wholesaling, if it ever does become outlawed, the assignment of a contract, you're going to be able to double close. You're going to be able to buy, get something in your own LLC, sell that LLC with the property in that LLC that owns it. So, there's always going to be ways to go and, sell properties.
That makes sense. And you're not worried about any tax hits on like actually double closing. It would be the same tax hit if you just wholesaled it, right?
I think when you own it, it's like a flip.
Hmm.
So, yeah, obviously you got to pay taxes, but you're not going to get away from that.
Yeah, totally. No, that makes sense. No, that's chill. Yeah, after the other actually wholesaler was actually an agent. So it was like really, it was a big curiosity because
Yeah, again, it's just being transparent, and if people aren't, then that's how they do business, right?
yeah. And so typically when you tie up a wholesale deal, you specifically say you act as if you're going to buy it, or you tell them, hey man, I'm going to wholesale this.
It depends on the situation. Like for example, if I'm have a house that like I will buy, but I find someone that will pay more, I'll just wholesale it, and I would had full intention of buying it because it makes sense.
Hmm.
And if it's like something like, for example, if I get a house in Texas right now and someone's like, hey, will you buy this? I'll say, I don't really do work in that area, but I have a lot of people in my network that do. I can put this in front of them and see what they'd pay for it. And then if they say, okay, do that, then I find someone to pay 200. I'll say, hey, I can get you 180. And then I would assign it to them for 200 or get an invoice or do whatever to get paid from that
Hmm.
buyer.
Okay. And what's your lack of liability with wholesaling? Like earnest money, I know sometimes has to become pretty dang high and non-refundable depending on the terms, but is it pretty low when you're wholesaling?
Liability, like with earnest money you're talking about?
And that's what I'm saying. Liability, as far as not like personal liability, but I'm talking liability as such of like, oh man, he wants $100,000 down for non-refundable earnest money. Is that not a
Yeah,
thing?
no, no. Usually can get away with like $100 down, like for earnest money, 500 bucks, 1,000. Because we're speed, right? So if someone's like, I need $100,000 down, I'm like, look, I'm closing in 14 days or 7 days. Like, I'm either gonna buy it or not, and I'm not here to waste your time. So we have a lot of properties we buy, and so if we had $100,000 on everything out, we would, it would be a waste of our time and our money. Like, so that's just not how we operate.
That totally makes sense. Well, and that's just the difference sometimes with like the MLS and other versions of it.
Right.
Um, Another question specifically would be like, so especially like on your first deals, tying stuff up or flipping them or, investing, part of that too is just to try to like, help understand how people can, I would love to be able to show the people how they could actually invest in real estate. We have a lot of like people have family members or other things that they could just use the tax benefits of investing in real estate. My
Right.
questions are like, how much anxiety did you feel on your first deal? Like, how afraid were you and how excited were you? All these random questions to kind of help, remember that first transaction.
So for my first wholesale deal, since you never own the property, there's not a lot of anxiety in buying, like doing the deal.
Hmm.
Yes, like finding trying to do the process like if you're brand new to anything could be nerve-wracking, but it's not. I would say I'm like not very nervous at all, because if you don't have a buyer that's going to buy it and you cancel within your due diligence period, which you've agreed with the seller, like it's like any other MLS deal. Like how many people cancel on on the MLS when say, a seller will say I'm gonna buy this and they cancel like the day of. Like that's just
Hmm.
part of real estate.
Yep. No, that totally makes sense. Well, then wholesaling, but then actually going to investing. I assume you have rentals or buy and hold, or you just complete flip.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I've focused mainly on wholesaling over the last couple of years, but I do have a couple
Hmm.
rentals. And the way that I look at the business is like I'm looking for a great deal. So if something were to go wrong, like I have a lot of equity. So not very nerve-wracking for me. If I were to buy something that didn't have a lot of equity and I'm not really cash flowing, a lot. If I'd be nervous for sure. I'd be like, oh man, and I think a lot of people try to get into real estate before they even have the money for maintenance, repairs, vacancies. Like they're not prepared. So I think there's someone in my mastermind that's like believes that like most people, like there's more people that lose money than make money in real estate because they try to get in way too early.
Hmm.
And they like read Kiyosaki's book and they're like, yeah, let me just get a ton of assets. And then something happens, vacancies, like I was saying, they're not able to float it. That's why there's so many tired landlords, the list absentee owners that like wholesalers and investors at targets, because a lot of people don't know what they're doing.
Hmm. I was this was a few years back, but I was in real estate agent, for a while, but I was in college and I was a real estate agent. I was actually like helping some buddies invest. Some of these guys had, they had kind of daddy's money to help back them, and
Right.
they're having funny. We're having fun on, finding them some serious cash flow. And I had another kid buddy who was like, he's like, I made all this money from summer sales, and he's like wanted to invest, and he was determined that he wanted to invest in Provo, Utah. This is where I was going to
Right.
school. And which is like, I'm like, dude, not really good cash flow right now. And he was like so determined. And, I wasn't interested in helping him in the transaction, but he was pitching me this deal. And he told me that he was going to make $17 per month cash flow after
Wow.
everything. I told him that's going to be gone by the time you have your first water heater. And then COVID hit and everybody moved out, and dude, he just got wrecked, and he's doing fine on other
Dude.
stuff. But I was like, man, like, I don't think that's a good deal. If it's not my job to say, I don't represent you.
No, that's scary, bro. And I think there's a lot of people that get into this that there's a lot of coaching companies out there as well that like teach people how to get into rentals. And like half the people I've seen, like a lot of people I saw in that program, like they're not ready. Like they're just scrounging up like their last cent for the down payment if they do qualify. Yeah, it can be a difficult. Do you know who Jerry Norton is?
Of course. Yeah. I
Yeah.
follow Jerry. I
Yeah,
love
so
Jerry.
me and Jerry are tight, and I was talking to him the other day, and he was telling me about like he thinks people get into it way too early. So if people are nervous, they probably should be, especially if they're not getting a good. You got to have at least $300 to $500 in cash flow every month, and
Hmm.
like have some equity, because if not, you see like Pace Morby, shout out to I like Pace, but like a lot of these guys talk about deals they do, but they have the discretionary income. They got multiple streams of income to like handle those if something goes wrong. But the people that are trying to invest, like they don't know that, or they're not
Yeah.
thinking about that.
Well, it's like pace. If you have 1,500 properties cash flowing like
Right.
you can be just fine.
Yeah,
One deal goes bad, you sell it, you move on.
exactly. And plus he's got tons of companies, he's got VA companies, he's got coaching companies. Like, if something bad happens, you actually losses are probably good for him.
Yeah. Honest
So
taxes.
yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. No, that's cool. So to get to actually achieve those goals of the $300 to $500 cash flow, are you pure value add, or you been able to find some deals where you didn't have to add any value as far as physical labor and construction?
It's hard to find, I would say, a property here in Utah at least, that if you're not going to add value, that someone will leave that kind of meat on the bone on a deal.
Hmm.
Um, you can achieve that in different states like the Midwest, the South, if you're willing to invest in other states. But here in Utah,
Yeah.
like it's very difficult unless
Well,
you add value.
that's the thing. Like about the Midwest, there's 10 and 11, 12, 13 caps going on right now. But the problem is like, I've heard some people say they don't want to invest in the Midwest because they just create more land and their appreciation doesn't really,
Yeah,
increase.
yeah. Like my buddy who used to be my business partner when I was wholesaling. Now I'm solo, but his dad invests in Missouri, so St. Louis. Like that's good return. The properties are low, but they don't really appreciate. That's just how it is. Like, so you're really just going for cash flow. And then the quality of people, like you got to deal with those, like the people, the kind of lower tier. No offense to them, but it's just how it is. So, you
Yeah.
got to pick your poison.
So that's always been the biggest debate back and forth. And maybe that's your question: cash flow or equity. If you can't get both.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't really play in the equity game yet. Like I'm not that balling where I'm like, hey, I'm cool to wait. I'd rather use money to make me money now than just like hope
Hmm.
it does. And so it's like cash flow or accumulate money, and then if I need to place in assets because I'm gonna get taxed or I need to allocate it, I'll do that. But
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm not equity play yet.
That makes sense. Well, so another question too on that tax item that you brought up. If you flip a property, if you like, I think you call it wholesaling when you take the whole deal, right?
Yeah, you close on it and then you throw it on the MLS and you own it and you sell it.
Okay. So when you take the whole deal or you just sell it or you flip it, are you allowed to 1031 those into other stuff or do you just have to take the tax hit?
You can 1031 it.
Okay. Have you found it oftentimes harder to 1031 or is it just easier just to sell it and take the hit
For
and
us,
hustle?
because we're not like consistently trying to flip, we've just taken the hit.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes a ton of sense. So yeah, that's kind of probably a significant portion of my questions. I've just been really curious, to be honest, about wholesaling after that first deal. After seeing that, like on that, that figure, I thought that was a lot of money. But then I realized, oh wow, like these wholesalers have this tied up, and it's a significant amount of money. So they have even a larger ability or maybe a larger responsibility than an agent making $15,000 off of a deal to actually go find it. Like if I was going to get paid $100,000
Oh,
to,
bro. Yeah.
to
Yeah.
flip a contract, I might just scour the nation. I don't know
Yeah.
what.
Yeah. That's exactly right. And I think the issue why people don't like a lot of wholesalers, like we kind of talked about in the beginning, is they will lock up properties that are not good deals and try to sell them when they can't. Like right now, I'm looking
Hmm.
at 2 deals from the wholesaler. They're not good deals. So they have the seller under contract. They're trying to find someone to buy it, and I don't think they will because they're at the wrong price. They're too high. So I think people get frustrated by that because they're like, getting their time wasted. But I've had my
Hmm.
time wasted like so many times on the MLS with retail buyers too. So it's not like only wholesalers that waste people time. It's just buyers in general.
Yeah, and even some sellers, like even some listing agents right now, it's like you make an offer and you're like, okay, like we're prepared to make you a very generous offer. And they're like, oh yeah, we're already prepared to reject it. You're like, it's $10,000 under asking price.
Yeah.
And you're like, dude, like, I don't know, after you've seen like the interest rates and like, I know the seller's making $350,000 in equity over 18 months. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like,
It's a
kind of
weird
seems like
time.
a fair offer. So that's the biggest thing is like, biggest questions too is I think you know, I guess the wholesalers have access to some of these deals because there's a lot of non-deals. It's like I haven't been able to find a deal on the MLS.
Well, that's the thing is like if you look at the MLS, I'll give you an example. So like a couple months ago, there's a house listed at 450 in American Fork. And I looked at it and it was a piece of crap. So I was like, they're not getting 450. 450 is like almost retail. So I called the
Mm-hmm.
guy and I said, hey, look, I know you got listed at 450. You're probably just trying your best to get as much as you can. I'll offer like 330, 340. And he's
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, right. And he kind of like laughed and he's like, never, no way. So later it came back to me because one of the students that I work with locked it up at 375 because people were kept on like, bringing them down. So the student came to me and like, hey, can you help me find a buyer for this? Like, I'm not able to find anybody. And I'm like, yeah, you're too high. You're just 375 is still too high. And I found a buyer at like 350 and I said, go back to the agent and say, hey, we can do like 330 or what was it? Like 325. So we can make 25K.
Mm-hmm.
And the agent accepted because there was a lot of things not disclosed that the agent didn't tell, like the parcel was jacked up, like so you had to get a new survey and you weren't getting exactly what you thought. So anyway, we ended up getting the deal for 325 and I wholesaled it to a buyer for 350 on something that I was originally willing to pay him more, but it just took forever. So we got him for less. So there are deals on the MLS. It's just you have to make offers, talk to the agents, find the right opportunity. It's pretty time consuming, but that's what you do. Like just because it's listed high doesn't mean they're going to get it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, appreciate your time. I'm trying to think about any other questions I have specifically. That's the biggest thing is like, what's your advice maybe to those that think that there's no deals or can't get in the market right now?
Yeah, yeah. So my advice is there's so many deals. I have a family member who's had their house listed for high, and now she's calling me. She's like, "What can I do? I need to sell this thing." So she's exploring seller finance, creative terms, like
Hmm.
cash offers, looking at, because she wants to sell. Like it's 60 days, 70 days, whatever. Like people, like they kind of, it's an emotional thing too. They just want to get it done. So just because something again is listed high doesn't mean the seller doesn't want to sell, or is there's no deals out there. So that's how we find deals every day. We just talk to people. We tell them like, this is the math. If we were to buy this at this, we're going to make this. That's why our offers, it's not that we're low and mean. It's just we're in a business, so we can get it done,
Hmm.
but it's going to be at this price. And, that's, I would say people, if they just base it off a list price, they're never going to, it's going to be very difficult to find a deal.
Hmm.
You got to call and make offers.
Yeah. So you said math there. I mean, I've followed some of Jerry's stuff as well, but like, I've heard like 0.67 or like 67% or 70% of ARV. What do you actually break it down? What do you look at? What fits your market or your
Yeah.
model?
Yeah, if you have time, you should come to my master class tonight. It's at 4, so it's an hour and a half. I actually teach people how to do deals wholesale the way I do it. Um, I don't go by like a rule set like that, because 67% minus repairs minus fees, like you'll never find anything. Like good luck, right? Or even 70%, 75.
Hmm.
Like, but I know my criteria of my buyers, like the ones that are looking for stuff, and the value I provide to them is that they don't have to scour the MLS wholesalers deals off market. I bring them what meets their criteria, and I kind of know what meets their criteria, and then they pay me a fee if I bring them a deal. So
Hmm.
so to answer your question, like what's a deal? It depends on who you're bringing the deal to, right? Some
Yep.
guy might be able to pay more. I'll give you this quick example. Went to a property, the one that was full of dog poop. I brought it to one of my buyers. I walked it and I said, "Hey, what would you pay for this?" I got ARV at like 480. I think you need to be at like 300,000 because this needs like a big repair for it to make sense. The guy's like, "I can do around like 320." So then I called the seller, make the offer. He's like, 320, that's a terrible offer. I got someone at 410. So I'm like, 410, that's probably someone that's messing around with you. They're gonna waste your time. It's probably a new investor that doesn't know what they're doing. So I called him today. And he's like, yeah, close 410. So I was like, dude, who bought that? There's no way they're making money on that deal. So he gave me the guy's info. I called them, and this buyer is actually a flipper. He just has access to hedge funds, like different people that have higher amount of money, like higher capital. So he beat my buyer and like what we were able to pay by like 60, 70, $80,000, because he knows something, like he has different resources than I do. So
Hmm.
now my goal is, who am I going to bring a deal to now? I'm bringing it to that guy because he can pay more than my guy. So I think I'm just letting you know that if you base it off of like a 60, 70, 80, you can fail a lot as a wholesaler, because you're going to lose out into deals like the guy I just talked to, who's like, well, what are you talking about? I got $240 million I have to place. Sometimes I'll buy a crappy deal if it's in the right area.
It's kind of like fund or institutional type money.
Yeah. So it's an interesting game. It's like when you're an investor, like kind of like what I'm doing is like finding properties. I'm really determining who's got the most money, who's looking for what, and let me give it to them and make my fee.
Hmm.
And the value I have is they didn't know about that deal. I brought it to them. I get paid. And so yeah, person with the best buyers wins.
Totally how it goes, especially when you're selling. You
Yeah.
can't blame them for taking the highest offer. Another question too. I think maybe one of the last questions I have, because you mentioned that you had a certain amount of time. Contractors or fix up actual labor. How have you been going about it? It seems like probably more up in your market. It's becoming more available. Sometimes like some of these rural areas, like right now I'm in Moab, and contractors are charging an arm and a leg for
Mhm.
everything they're doing. Is it
Yeah.
still that way up there, or how are you going about that?
So as a wholesaler, we don't fix and flip our
Hmm.
properties, but if I were to fix and flip one, yeah, it is kind of a not only finding the work, but finding someone that's actually good. Like if you find someone that's good and trustworthy, they're usually pretty expensive and busy. So that's kind of the difficult part. And that's why, like, if someone's going to stay in their lane and just fix and flip, they usually have their own crews. But if you're going to
Hmm.
dabble and fix and flip like one in a little bit, yeah, you're going to run into some issues. You don't know if your person's legit. So yeah, I would say
Makes sense.
eh, Yeah, flipping and doing it here and there without like understand the process or having a good referral, it can be risky too.
Interesting. I appreciate it. Yeah, man. I don't think I technically have any other questions at this point. You kind of answered a lot. The biggest thing I think sometimes, I think even my own personal was just trying to get over, I guess, that mentality. I think wholesaling kind of had a black mark on it to me, at least
Yeah.
initially.
Oh, I
And
totally get that.
I get wholesale callers for my houses and all these things, and these guys just have no idea what they're doing.
No,
And
I
so I think
know,
sometimes that kind of references, or sometimes it's like a hired virtual assistant that just is
bro.
trying to read a script.
It's
So,
painful, dog. It's painful. And that's why I like what I have is it called painless wholesale or painless flipping because like I don't tell people to go out and just go talk to a bunch of people, ask them what they're selling. Like it's just you don't even know what you're doing. Like you're wasting time. A lot of people are locking up properties that and getting them under contract and they have no idea who they're going to sell them to and they don't have a deal. So I teach people start with the buyers first. Like for example, for you, if you wanted a house, I'd say, what are you looking for? And then I would if it came across my desk or if I marketed for it, then we'd have a better opportunity to do work together versus me
mhm,
just calling every absentee owner in Utah and trying to get lucky. Like that's just,
mhm,
you cut the black mark. So when I first started wholesaling, I kind of had that thought too. As I was talking to every seller, I was my mindset was like the wrong mindset. I was like, how can I convince people to take this low offer? That's what I thought I was doing. But as you get deeper into it, and this is when you sleep good at night, is like, hey, look, I can't convince anyone to take a cash offer. I just need to find people that are selling and tell them their options. List it,
mhm,
flip it, keep it. I can give you one of my agent friends or I can wholesale it. Like I can buy it or I can assign it to one of my partners. That's when you start be feeling really confident and there's no black mark because it's like, hey, I told you what you could do. You chose you wanted the quick close. It's up to you. So
mhm.
then it's really not anything other than just, they want a quick sale and that's fine. We can help them out with that.
Well, and I've seen the same thing, and like, on the realtor side of things, there's really bad agents out there. $700 and a little course and a test, and you're an agent.
Yeah,
Like,
real.
it's less than all these other things. So I've
It
seen
is.
dual. Also, on that licensing part of it, in Utah, you don't have to be a licensed agent to wholesale. Is that correct?
That is correct. You do not need a license. I know they're trying to crack down on that in other states, but here you don't need it. But again, it comes back to like if they ever try to regulate the assignment, which is like you can't get it under contract and assign to someone else, there's always gonna be different ways to get around it. Like you can't
Hmm.
stop someone trying to. There's just always gonna be flexible ways of, like I said, LLC. Like if you buy it with an LLC and then you make one of the members of whoever buys it, like a new member of the LLC, then they're gonna own the property. So
Yeah, well, and like after studying wholesaling or digging deep into a lot of stuff, like I watched your content, Jerry's content, went down the rabbit hole on wholesaling after this
mhm.
$105,000 wholesale fee. Because I was like, how do I make that? But
Yes, of
not
course, it's
not
amazing.
not my business model. The thing is like after going down that rabbit hole, I kind of realized that like having as an agent, like knowing how to assign stuff, like I can still assign things. Like a buyer gets a deal contract and he wants to bow out, and the other guy's like, yo, dude, I'd give the seller 15 grand more. And if the seller's okay with it, the buyer's okay with it, that buyer could make 5 grand from walking away from that contract on an assignment. That's totally
That's
legal.
And that's actually what the assignment agreement was for, was like in situations where you couldn't close on it, but you didn't want to lose out on your earnest money or the deal and you wanted to keep good faith, you could assign your agreement to someone else, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now there's fees involved, which is, it's fine as well. Like if the seller, this is the thing, like if a seller agrees to 400,000 and and that's the best deal that they chose, and then someone will pay 420, there's nothing wrong with that, in my
Mm-hmm.
opinion. That's like, that's you knew someone that was willing to pay more. Does that 420, is that technically, did that guy pay more? Who knows? Like people pay more than they should all the time, in my opinion, but they still do
Well,
it.
and yeah, if you're flipping a house and you're going to make a significant amount of money and you took a $10,000 haircut because the buyer wasn't happy with something, like,
Hmm.
it's still chill. A lot of times
Yeah.
people are, 10, 15, $20,000 just because they know market's softer and hey, I'm happy to get this actually sold.
Yeah.
So,
For sure. Well, if there's any ways we can work together, for example, if you ever have a seller who's like doesn't want to list it but wants to explore their options, you can let me know and I'll talk to them. I'll just say, hey, this is what it would look like if you took a cash offer. This would look like if we did a novation and we kind of fixed up your house and partnered on listing it together. So we do
Hmm.
that as well, where I don't know if you've heard of this yet, novations, but it's like you partner with the seller, you have them sign an attorney, power of attorney, and you're allowed to list it in their behalf, and you put work into their home. So when they sell it, you can get a fee by listing it retail on the MLS.
And so, like, is that like novation? Basically, it's almost like you're fixing it up as if you're flipping it. But is that novation like, by all means, I'm going to make $15,000 off of this? Is that what a novation clause is?
Yeah, I
That's
don't know exactly what it states, but I know it allows you to list a property you do not own in the behalf of the seller, and when you sell it, you can accept a fee
mhm.
when you're selling it to like a traditional like a bank like finance someone that gets their money from traditional financing.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. That may make more sense because the seller, maybe they own their house outright, and they don't like debt, and it's like you can throw a little bit of money, partner up, and
Yeah,
get
yeah.
them
And
some more money for it.
a lot of the situations where novations come into play is like sellers like, hey, I want to sell my house for, 210. It barely needs anything, but I just, I don't want to list it. And then you could say, hey, look, we can do this deal for you and we're willing to put in like, a new kitchen or a new bathroom so it can get this top dollar. But because I'd be willing to put that money in there, I'd obviously want to get compensated. So let's list this. When the sellers come in, they have their concessions and what they want. I'll take care of it. I'll pay for the fees. And then obviously I'll get you what we agreed on. You wanted 210, I'll get you 220. And then you would have to list that thing at like 280. And the fees, you pay all the fees and you still make money.
No, it makes sense. Like in the on the real estate side of things, on the brokerage side of things, I've seen big brokerages in big cities do exactly that same thing, where they're like, "Yeah, I'll cover this if you give me some more money." Like and above market commission, I'll put $15,000 my own money into your house.
Yeah, that's it.
You
That's
know,
all it is. Yeah, it's like,
it
hey, let me put
happens.
some more money. It's really just flipping their house without having to close on it and take all the closing costs. And yeah,
Hmm.
it's the way to do it.
Okay. Well, yeah, man, I appreciate your time, and I don't know if there's anything else you want to touch base or touch on, and happy to stay in touch. And
Yeah, let's
we're
stay in
not
touch.
not really in the wholesaling model, but we're definitely in the selling model on that side of things.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Stay in touch. And again, if you come into any opportunities where it would be an opportunity for a cash or a seller that needs to fix it up and isn't wanting to list it yet, like I got you covered, and we can JV, we can work on it, we can split the commission. You can let them know what we're doing. It's all pretty transparent, all good.
yeah, things like that totally exist. So I
Cool,
really
man.
appreciate it, Nathan.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Let me know if you need anything else. All right.
okay. All right. Thanks for
Thanks,
your time.
Preston. See ya.